Pyongyang has traffic jams now. The city, once famous for empty boulevards, is filling up with privately owned cars, the ones wearing yellow license plates. Then the numbers stop making sense. China says it exported exactly 2 vehicles to North Korea last year, while shipping the country nearly 193,000 passenger car tires. And the government is making it easier for wealthy North Koreans to buy cars, while reportedly investigating where those buyers got their money. So where are the cars coming from? Who can suddenly afford them? And why is Kim Jong Un letting private wealth become this visible? Because the traffic is only the first sign of something much bigger changing underneath North Korea. Part 1. The traffic jam that shouldn't exist. And the first sign this is no temporary spike is that Pyongyang has started rebuilding itself around the cars. Informal parking attendants now work the curbs. New apartment blocks are going up with underground garages. Electric vehicle chargers are appearing. And the immaculately uniformed traffic controllers who spent years choreographing intersections with barely any traffic finally have enough cars to justify the choreography. The most revealing detail is bolted to the bumpers. Yellow plates mark privately owned vehicles, and they're now appearing with 5-digit registration numbers. Recent visitors have counted more than 100 yellow-plated cars on a single trip near hotels, markets, and the Gold Lane bowling alley. And satellite imagery shows parking areas and major roads growing steadily busier, year after year. One analyst thinks the private fleet could eventually pass 20,000. Nobody outside the regime knows the real number, which may be the most North Korean detail in this whole story. And here's where this stops being a traffic story. Some of the people making money from the boom don't own cars at all. In North Korea, a visibly dirty vehicle can reportedly get you fined or turned away at the entrance to Pyongyang and other major cities. So car washes have sprouted along the outskirts, staffed by poor North Koreans earning day wages washing the cars of people rich enough to buy them. Before the story even reaches who owns these machines, they're already sorting the country into new classes. One traffic jam has produced parking attendants, garage builders, charger installers, and a car wash labor market. North Korea didn't simply acquire more cars. It accidentally grew an automotive service economy around them. Even the air above Pyongyang is changing. Satellite data shows the city's nitrogen dioxide footprint, pollution associated with traffic and other urban activity, running roughly a third stronger than before the pandemic, with the increase still visible in warmer months when heating is less likely to explain it. Down at street level, the consequences pile up in more familiar ways. More reported accidents, worsening parking, and a government suddenly publishing revised traffic rules covering offenses like smoking behind the wheel and jaywalking. North Korea has reached the stage of automotive development where it needs written rules for people doing stupid things in traffic. Progress comes at you fast. Parking garages, car washes, EV chargers, and dirty car rules are all consequences. The real change happens somewhere far less cinematic, in North Korea's law books. The paperwork changed first. Part 2. Private money behind the wheel. Start with the most boring object in this story, a vehicle registration document. North Korean law, on paper, already allowed individuals to own a passenger car. The catch was making that ownership work in real life. Buyers had to document an approved source for the money, and in a country full of quietly earned fortunes, that requirement pushed most privately used cars behind company names and institutional registrations. The car existed. The owner, officially, did not. What changed over the last 2 years is the system around that ownership. North Korea has formalized and expanded a workable path to actually owning a car. Households can now buy through state-certified sellers and register vehicles in their own right, generally one per household. For a certain class of North Koreans, the fiction is over. The car in front of the apartment is legally theirs. Who is that class? When North Korea's state distribution system collapsed in the crisis of the 1990s, informal markets stopped being a side hustle and became how people survived. The traders who mastered those markets became the donju, literally the money masters, and their fortunes never went back in the bottle. Now their children are doing something with cars that should sound very familiar. Take a young woman in Haesan, a city on the Chinese border, far from Pyongyang's showcase avenues. Her wealthy parents bought her a van. She can't drive it. She never learned. So she hired a man who can, and now she rides along collecting fares from passengers, while her employee handles the wheel. The van reportedly brings in around 6,000 Chinese yuan a month. Owning the van, it turns out, matters far more than knowing how to drive it. Capitalism has had stranger openings. She's part of a pattern. Other young owners are buying passenger vans and running informal taxi routes. One reportedly bought a 10-ton truck and hired a driver to haul freight. In most of the world, a car is a purchase. In North Korea right now, a car is a business. At reported prices of roughly $10,000 to $20,000, these machines are capital. Money buying the machine that makes more money, one of capitalism's oldest tricks, now running on North Korean roads. But not everyone who buys one of these rolling businesses gets rich. Many of the vehicles trickling in from China are old, and some are junk. Reports from inside the country describe buyers discovering that their imported bargain is a mechanical disaster. One owner in Haisan reportedly borrowed money to buy a van, planning to earn it back in fares, then watched breakdown after breakdown drag the household deeper into debt. The asset became a liability with wheels. North Korea has now developed yet another feature of modern car ownership: buying a terrible used car and regretting every decision that led to it. And in the wreckage, a second economy is growing. Mechanics who can keep aging Chinese engines alive, and traders who can source the right spare part, are reportedly becoming some of the more desirable earners in the borderlands. When the gold rushes cars, the people selling shovels are holding wrenches, and the appetite is spreading beyond the people who can buy. A rental scene is emerging, with North Koreans hiring cars for business trips, anniversaries, even dates. A few hours of borrowed status and borrowed freedom. Waits around driving tests have reportedly grown. Women are pursuing licenses in growing numbers, and reports out of Haisan describe female drivers appearing on the roads, including husband and wife taxi teams, to the open irritation of some of the men they now compete with. In a country this rigid, a driver's license has quietly become both a status symbol and a small social revolution, laminated onto one card. And that leaves a much stranger question. Why is one of the most controlling governments on earth encouraging any of this? Part 3. The state stands behind the counter. On the surface, a communist state letting citizens accumulate private wealth looks like retreat. Surrender in slow motion. That reading is tempting. It's also wrong. To own the car legally, you still have to go through the state. Registration is state-issued. Approved sellers handle the formal purchases. State-linked operations sit inside the fuel and servicing networks. Private mechanics and parts traders can still make money around the edges, but the government has positioned itself at the gates where the biggest transactions pass. There's even a rental layer, where privately purchased vehicles get hired out through arrangements that send a cutback to state agencies, which means the government collects whether you drive your car or lend it out. Kim Jong Un has personally inspected a new automotive service center, where rows of customer cars sat waiting under silver covers, like a dealership expecting royalty. Tolerating this market would be one thing. The government is staffing it. Decades of illegal street markets taught the regime a lesson it apparently took to heart. You can fight private commerce, or you can stand behind the counter. And the counter is going upmarket, fast. A Pyongyang showroom has been observed displaying recent Lexus and Mercedes models, with asking prices reaching $250,000, often far above what the same cars cost anywhere else on the planet. Let that number sit. A $250,000 Lexus. In North Korea. In the country the world still associates with famine footage, somebody is being asked to walk through that door and pay supercar money for a sedan, and the state is delighted to make the sale. Then, in June of this year, the counter got an even bigger showroom. Reports from inside the country describe a major vehicle exhibition in Pyongyang, floors stocked with Chinese electric vehicles, including the premium Zeekr brand, alongside luxury used imports. Wealthy North Koreans could browse and place reservations. A premium EV car show. In Pyongyang. That sentence should still sound ridiculous. But the detail that makes it unmistakably North Korean is what was reportedly happening behind the showroom floor. Security authorities were instructed to quietly investigate the prospective buyers, their identities, and where their money came from. Read that sequence again slowly. The state organizes an event to attract the country's richest private citizens. It wants their foreign currency badly enough to import luxury EVs. And while it takes their reservations with one hand, it runs financial background checks on them with the other. That's the real answer to why Kim allows this. The regime has moved past regulating its new wealthy class. It's learning to harvest that class's money, while keeping the class itself under a microscope. The yellow plate is becoming two things at once: a revenue stream and a reason to look more closely at the person behind the wheel. There's just one flaw in this elegant machine. It runs on cars, and North Korea can't build them in anything close to the necessary numbers. which means the story now has to cross a border. Part 4. 2 cars and 193,000 tires. Remember the two numbers from the start of this video. Up close, they get stranger. China's official customs data says it exported 2 vehicles to North Korea in 2025. 2. That is the entire official car trade between North Korea and its largest trading partner, on paper. Now look out any window in central Pyongyang. Since 2017, United Nations sanctions have banned supplying transportation vehicles to North Korea outright. China's government says its companies must trade lawfully, so officially, the pipeline barely exists. Unofficially, the same Chinese customs ledger tells a different story if you know where to look. In 2025, China shipped nearly 193,000 passenger car tires to North Korea. Do the arithmetic. 4 tires per car, and you have enough rubber to shoe roughly 48,000 vehicles. That doesn't mean 48,000 new cars rolled in. Replacement tires matter. What it tells you is that the fleet on those roads is now big enough to consume an astonishing amount of rubber. And exports of car mirrors nearly quadrupled against pre-pandemic levels. Lubricants rose more than 150%. The official car trade is almost non-existent. The ecosystem needed to keep a rapidly growing fleet on the road is anything but. 2 cars, officially, with an extraordinary appetite for accessories. The cars themselves take a quieter road. One Chinese used car dealer described how it works. A vehicle changes hands again and again inside China, resold through a chain of intermediaries, until the final handoff goes to smugglers who know how to move it across the border. On paper, almost nothing crosses. In reality, the paperwork loses the race. The badges are familiar too. Chang'an, Chery, Geely, with BMWs and Audis salted in for the elite. The German brands say they do no business in North Korea, and can't control where a second-hand car ends up after it changes hands repeatedly, which is precisely what the relay produces. By the time a sedan reaches the border, it may have changed hands enough times that the manufacturer has long since lost any control over where it ends up, and the relay does break. This spring, Chinese border security reportedly busted a group of would-be vehicle smugglers in Jilin province. One visible snap in a chain that mostly stays invisible. When crackdowns pinch the pipeline, the effect shows up hundreds of miles away on North Korean price tags. Reports from Haesun describe used car prices jumping whenever the smuggling routes seize up. A legal, state-registered market inside North Korea now moves to the rhythm of Chinese police work outside it. Inside North Korea, owning one of these cars is now legal, state-registered, monetized, and increasingly encouraged. Outside North Korea, delivering that same car is a sanctions violation. Kim's government has built a lawful domestic market on top of an unlawful international supply chain, and both halves need each other to function. Smuggling explains where the cars come from. It still doesn't explain the harder question: why can North Korea suddenly afford to absorb them? For that, you have to look at a war on the other side of the continent. Part 5. The wartime customer. So where is the money coming from? Part of the answer is China. Trade between the two countries has roared back to nearly pre-pandemic levels. But the stranger answer is that North Korea finally found somebody who urgently wants something it can sell at enormous scale: ammunition. It didn't just find another trading partner, it found a customer. Russia's war in Ukraine consumes artillery ammunition on a staggering scale, and Moscow has turned to Pyongyang for millions of additional rounds. This is where the traffic jam stops being funny. A multinational sanctions monitoring team has documented enormous transfers of North Korean munitions to Russia. One participating government estimates as many as 9 million artillery and rocket rounds shipped in 2024 alone. And weapons weren't the only export. By late that year, more than 11,000 North Korean troops had been deployed too. The deployments in North Korea's overseas labor programs are bringing in badly needed foreign currency, and South Korea's central bank says the deepening Russia relationship contributed directly to the country's growth. And the numbers suggest the relationship is starting to matter. North Korea's economy has now grown for 3 straight years, by the estimate of that same central bank, lifting output above where it stood before the harshest sanctions fully bit. The cars are not proof of a miracle, but they aren't imaginary either. No, you can't trace a BMW in Pyongyang back to a particular artillery shell. But the economy buying that BMW has acquired a powerful new customer, and that customer gives Pyongyang exactly what sanctions were supposed to make harder to obtain: another major source of money and trade, plus a powerful diplomatic partner. The fuel alone tells you how much the rules have bent. The UN caps North Korea's refined petroleum imports at 500,000 barrels a year. Analysis cited by the monitoring team estimated that Russia supplied more than 1 million barrels in an 8-month stretch. More vehicles need fuel, and suddenly North Korea has a partner willing to supply it far past the legal ceiling. On North Korea's tiny border with Russia, engineers are pouring the new lifeline in concrete, a road bridge, something the two countries have never had in their entire shared history. Rail has linked the two countries for decades. A road, for cars and trucks, never has. And satellite imagery now shows heavy construction on the Russian side, with the projected opening date already pushed back more than once. On the much larger Chinese border, North Korea is putting up new warehouses, customs buildings and vehicle depots at a long-dormant crossing. The roads inside North Korea are filling up. The roads out of North Korea are being built. Keep that bridge in mind. It's about to matter. Economic isolation works very differently when another heavily sanctioned military power actively wants what you sell. And it works differently still when that customer holds a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. In 2024, Russia vetoed the renewal of the UN's own sanctions monitoring panel. The multinational team now documenting these violations exists, because the original watchdog was put down by one of the countries it was watching, which makes the yellow-plated sedan something stranger than a status symbol, a consumer good made possible in part by Chinese commerce and Russia's war in Ukraine. But new money entering a country tells you nothing about where it lands. And in North Korea, everyone can now see exactly where it landed. It's parked outside. Part 6. The slashed tires. Private wealth is easier to ignore when nobody can see it. People have spent 30 years quietly earning money in North Korea's markets and quietly hiding it. In drawers, in dollars, in favors. A car ruins that arrangement. It's wealth that sits on the street in broad daylight. Wealth the neighbors walk past every morning. Wealth with your registration number bolted to it. The entry price runs from several $1,000s to more than $20,000. Far beyond what an ordinary North Korean household can casually spend. And remember what these vehicles actually are. Income-producing assets. The family that buys a van earns fares every day. Wealth compounds on wheels, and everyone without a car gets to watch it happen. At exactly the same time, North Korea's own currency, the won, was weakening sharply, and the pain has been anything but shared. The Donju are far more likely to hold dollars and yuan, so they were much better protected. Workers paid in won watched the same paycheck buy less food and less fuel by the month. One source inside the country described the resentment in brutally simple terms: going to work without enough for a decent cornmeal breakfast, then watching somebody pass in a private car, raising dust, dressed in clean clothes, carrying a bag of money. And the question behind that description is the one the car boom has dragged into the open. If this is socialism, why does one family now live in an entirely different world from the family next door? Strip away the economics, and it comes down to this: somebody going to work hungry, while a neighbor rolls past in a machine worth more money than he may ever hold in his life. That yellow plate started this story as proof of private ownership. To the neighbor who can afford breakfast, it looks more like a price tag, announcing exactly who won. And eventually, some people stopped just watching. Reports smuggled out of the northern provinces describe private cars being attacked. Tires slashed, windows smashed, paintwork keyed, vehicles spat on in the street. One source described it plainly as anger at inequality that has become impossible to ignore. Owners have reportedly started hunting for dash cams and parking their cars within sight of security cameras, which is its own kind of dark comedy. North Korea's new rich, begging for more surveillance. The problem reportedly grew serious enough to reach party meetings, where attacks on what were effectively private cars were treated as behavior undermining the socialist system. A communist party, now worrying about angry workers slashing the tires of privately controlled cars. North Korea's economic transition has reached a strange place. Remember the young woman in Hyesan, riding shotgun in her own van? Her advantage existed before the first passenger stepped aboard. Her family could afford the van. That is how entrenched money works everywhere else on Earth. And now it works in North Korea too, visibly enough that people are keying it into the paint. And this isn't just Pyongyang. The vans in Hyesan and the freight businesses in Hamhung prove the new money travels. But the capital remains another world. Kim's own regional development push is built around the admission that the provinces lag behind it. A traffic jam in the capital tells you somebody has money. The slashed tires tell you everybody else has noticed. So the cars mint winners and mark them for resentment at the same time. Even the winners, the family with the van, the donju with the sedan, the buyer with the Zeekr reservation, are about to hit a wall that no amount of money moves. Part 7. You can own the car. You don't own the road. Think about what owning a car normally means. Keys in your pocket. A full tank. The ability to point the hood at the horizon and leave. No permission required. That's the promise a century of advertising sold, and honestly, it wasn't lying. And North Koreans clearly feel the pull of that promise. It's why couples are renting cars for anniversaries and dates, and why more people are lining up for licenses. The business value matters, but so does the feeling of being able to go somewhere because you chose to. Across this entire story, people keep reaching for the same thing the car has always represented: the ability to move through the world on your own terms. Now watch the promise hit North Korean asphalt. A Donju family buys its legal, yellow-plated, state-registered vehicle, and the moment they drive toward another province, they meet the same security checkpoints and travel permits that have policed North Korean movement for generations. Interprovincial travel still means permits and security checkpoints, a system older than the traffic jam and entirely untouched by it. Because the bridge on the Russian border is the final twist of the knife. North Korea is preparing to open its first road link with Russia, a crossing built so trucks can eventually roll between the two countries. Even that new international road comes with a North Korean catch. The planned customs layout suggests Russian trucks will unload near the frontier and turn around, rather than driving deep into the country. More connection, carefully engineered to prevent too much contact. North Korea is opening roads without really opening itself. The bridge is being built so commercial trucks can cross between Russia and North Korea, while a North Korean citizen with a legal private car can still need permission simply to cross from one province into another. North Korea is becoming more connected to the outside world before its own citizens become fully connected to North Korea. The state will sell you horsepower. It has not agreed to sell you the horizon. And that's the part that's easy to miss. Kim isn't taking the cars back. He isn't shutting down the rentals or forcing the vans out of business. North Korea is allowing some people to become richer. It's simply drawing a hard line around what that money is allowed to buy. A better car? Yes. The freedom to go wherever you want? No. Every concession stops at the same checkpoint, and that checkpoint is political control. That's the uncomfortable lesson idling in Pyongyang traffic. Consumer capitalism and political freedom are not a package deal. North Korea is field testing whether a state can absorb markets, wealthy entrepreneurs, and luxury consumption, while conceding nothing that matters to its grip. So look one more time at that yellow plate. At the start of this video, it meant something had changed. Private people, private money, private cars. Now you can read its fine print. The plate marks what the state has decided to permit, and by existing, it maps exactly where permission ends. You can own the car. That doesn't mean you own the road. And that's why this traffic jam matters far beyond Pyongyang. Maybe we've been waiting for the wrong kind of change. For years, the outside world bet on two kinds of pressure: squeeze North Korea hard enough from the outside, or hope growing markets slowly loosen the state's grip from within. But what if neither works the way we expected? North Korea may be developing a third option. Some people run businesses, shop for $250,000 cars, hire employees and build private fortunes, while the state learns how to take a cut, watch the owners, and decide where they're allowed to go. And look at what's rising beyond Pyongyang. A new road bridge between North Korea and Russia, the first ever built between the two countries, is moving toward completion. New customs yards are taking shape on the Chinese border. The country that spent decades defined by isolation is physically constructing new ways to connect itself to the two powers that matter most to its survival, which leaves questions much bigger than traffic. What happens to sanctions when the neighbors with the greatest leverage over North Korea are also handing it new economic lifelines? What does it mean when a growing slice of North Koreans starts seeing cars, private income, and consumer choice as things a person can aspire to, while movement itself still depends on permission? And if Kim can allow some people to get richer without giving them any more political power, does economic change weaken this regime or feed it? Because what if this isn't a transition on the way to something else? What if this is the model? A country richer than it used to be, harder to isolate than it used to be, and no less authoritarian. Maybe those yellow plates are evidence of something hopeful, ordinary life, genuinely improving for at least part of the population. Or maybe North Korea is demonstrating something far more uncomfortable. A dictatorship doesn't have to stay poor to stay a dictatorship. The empty streets once told us how isolated North Korea was. The traffic jam may be telling us what comes after isolation. If you want more stories about what's really changing across Asia, subscribe to Shadows of Asia, and share this with someone who still pictures Pyongyang with empty roads.